Good morning, hello, and welcome to the 4th Annual New Jersey Youth Transitions Conference. My name is April DePietro, and I come to you from the Camden County Partnership for Children. I am the Community Resource Director. We are thrilled to have you here with us today. We're excited to introduce our wonderful presenters, Rachel and Jeremy, and they come to us from SPAN. They're going to be talking today about empowering youth and advocacy and inclusion strategies. Thank you both for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. Let's give a warm welcome to our presenters, and the floor is yours.
Okay, well, I guess I'll kick it off. First off, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on empowerment through advocacy, supporting youth with disabilities. I'll introduce myself. My name is Jeremy Hayer. I'm a youth engagement coordinator with SPAN. And today I'm joined by my co-presenter, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Amy and April, for having us at the New Jersey Youth Transition Conference. My name is Rachel Shandler, and I am the Youth Engagement and Empowerment Coordinator for SPAN. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you all so much for allowing us to speak with you today. I'm just going to give a quick heads up. If you hear a lot of construction on my end, they are working on the floor above me in the office, so I do apologize for that. But without further ado, let's get into the first slide of our presentation. And this is all about what SPAN provides. And Rachel, I'm going to let you take over this part.
So first, we're going to talk about what SPAN provides. SPAN provides training, and that training includes monthly transition workshops, and also we do a monthly student-led IP workshop, among other things. As far as technical assistance, we have a warm line, a daily warm line that people can call up and get their questions. And as you can see, information and support. So you could call that warm line daily and get information and some information and support from our warm line colleagues. And the contact information for our warm line, I believe, right, Jeremy, is at the end of this presentation, so be sure to access that. And we are committed to children and families with the greatest need due to disability or special health, mental health needs, poverty, discrimination based on race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, language, immigrant or homeless status. We're involved in programs and projects involving the child welfare system and the juvenile justice system, no matter the geographic location or other special circumstances.
Absolutely, we do. We provide assistance to quite a lot of people in our region, and like Rachel said, the number for our SPAN warm line will be provided, I believe, at the last slide of our presentation. So stay tuned for that. So let's go on to our next slide here. Okay, sorry. And this is all about advocacy. So let's talk about what you'll be. Actually, sorry, I went on a little too far.
No, you're good. You're great.
Quite makes sense. Anyway, sorry. So let's talk about what you'll be learning through today's presentation. So you'll be learning about various tools and strategies made for youth and their families. And these tools come to us through advocacy. And we also will talk about supported decision making, which is the practice of allowing youth to make their own decisions and also to gain the confidence to speak to others and ask for their advice in solving various issues and obstacles. We'll also be talking about transition planning, which is the practice of helping our youth and young adults transition from teenage, high school age into the college and young adult independent part of adult life. And at the end, we'll also be covering several of SPAN's youth programs, including a blog, a presentation, and many more tools and resources related to youth engagement.
And before Jeremy jumps on to the next slide, I just wanted to also mention that you'll hear us reference a lot of resources that you can find within this PowerPoint, or we have a resource folder that's also within this PowerPoint, because you're going to hear us mention a lot of different resources and ideas and things that we've learned, and like myself having a disability, things that I've learned. But as far as the resources, you can access the resources either within this PowerPoint, and it will come up as a resource folder, and a couple of the resources that we're going to mention are within that folder. So I just wanted to point that out there. So be sure to check that out for sure.
We're going to make a lot of, not a lot, but quite a few references to these tools. But
Yeah.
when we get to the slide, containing these tools, we'll go into far more detail about them and how you can access them.
For
So,
sure. Thanks, Jerry.
of course. So now we can talk about advocacy. So let's begin. So self-advocacy is basically defined as a skill of recognizing your own needs and communicating them to others in an assertive manner, ensuring that you receive the necessary support to meet those needs. And there are many ways to build up that self-advocacy, but we selected 3 here today. And I'm going to let Rachel go into a bit more detail on these steps in particular.
Yeah, and I have a lot to say about this slide. Personally, I was thinking about this morning. I think that this slide is one of the most important slides on this slide deck. And I'm just going to mention them, and then I'll talk a little bit more in depth about a few of them. So the first of the 3 recommended steps are understanding yourself and your disability, knowing your strengths, weaknesses, and needs, and learning how to act for what you need. And I want to go a little further into some of these. First and foremost, understanding yourself and your disability is probably one of the most important things, I feel. And when it comes to that, for understanding yourself and your disability, I feel like once you understand that and understand yourself, it'll be easier to do. It may be a little easier to do some the other 2 advocacy skill building things we have here. And another big thing when it comes to understanding yourself and your disability, family support is huge when it comes to this. If you have family support throughout working on all of these steps, you'll be having that support is a great thing, because it'll make working on these things a lot easier, because you'll be able to connect with others, and they'll be able to help you as you walk through each of these steps. I know for myself personally, my family has been a huge support system to me throughout all of my years, and especially now, me and my family are going through a transition period, because I want to, eventually live completely on my own. Right now, I live with my family, and eventually my family is gonna, my family's talking about retirement. So we have to look and see, like, what is that going to look like for me, and what is it going to look like for them. So we will eventually at some point, we're going to have to go through these steps and talk about them more. So I just want to point out that, even as you get as old as I am, you still have to refer to these, and do these advocacy skills and work on them, no matter how old you are. So that's why it's really important to start these skills when you're young. One of the tools that we have in our resource folder is it's a student inventory tool. And what you can do is you can look at the tool, and the tool will, it looks at different areas of your life, and you can rate those areas and see where you're struggling and where you need more support. So when you look at knowing your strengths, weaknesses, and needs, that will help you with that. And also, we have another tool in our folder that's called it also looks at your strengths, preferences, and needs, and that will support you and help you as you learn to know your strengths, weaknesses, and needs. So the basic point is this stuff takes a while, and it can be difficult, but learning these skills early is really important, because you're going to have to reference them at each stage of your transitions. So, when your child, say another example could be when you're in an IEP, when your child is going in an IEP meeting, going to the IEP meeting with them and saying, and having them make that connection to say, like, this is where I get the support I need. It will help them learn, like, these skills early and make that connection that this is how I get the support I need. Sorry, that was a little rambly, but
No, that
yeah.
was perfect, Rachel. And before we go into the next slide, I do want to kind of elaborate on the IEP
Yes, please.
portion of that as well. So what happens a lot is that a lot of parents are kind of led to believe that they don't need to bring children that are age 13 and below to IEP meetings. And the thought process behind that is often that they just wouldn't understand it or that they're not mentally mature enough for it. But what we what we try to explain is that that isn't necessarily the case. If your child is in need of an IEP and there are meetings that are needed for that, the child can be brought in attendance. They don't need to be left home or not included. And a good thing that kind of ties this all into advocacy is that if you can teach your child about the basics of self-advocacy, then when they're at that IEP meeting and they have a question about a lesson plan or anything else of that nature, they don't need to just wait till they get home and then ask mom and dad. They can literally speak up on their own and they can ask that question and they can get the confidence to be able to again advocate for themselves and to find out that information on their own. And personally, we just feel that if you can start doing that at a younger age, it's only going to be beneficial as they transition into adulthood. So I just wanted to make a quick little addendum onto that. But thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you, Jerry, for recapping. That was way better than I explained. I got a little nervous, but yeah, we at SPAN, we encourage people to, it says, I believe at age 14 that your child can start to go to the IEP meetings. We want to encourage you to have them go earlier if you can. And again, I want to say, because I don't think I made it clear, that's really important because being, like Jeremy said so great, being able to have them make that connection early. Okay, if I go to this IEP meeting, I'll be able, and I tell the teacher what I need and how I need it, and I talk to my parents and my teachers. This is how I'm going to get the support. So when they go on further in their life and to different areas of their life, they'll be able to, be like, I did this before, so now I can do it again. And that will empower them, and make them feel more comfortable when they have to, when they're in a situation where they have to do that again. So it's really important to try to start those things as early as you can.
Yes, absolutely. And just sorry, one more thing. Sorry, the slide is very important to us, as you can probably tell. But one more thing about the IEP from a personal standpoint is that I personally did not need an IEP when I was going through the schooling system, but a lot of my friends did. And some of them they were brought in only at age 14, and others were brought in as early as age 10. And something that I wouldn't know until I began with SPAN was that there was a marked difference in how the 10-year-old who was introduced to IEP viewed the meeting as opposed to the 14-year-old. See, the 10-year-old, when they were introduced, they initially they thought it was lame, like their words, not mine. But eventually, after a while, they got used to it and they saw it as a way of expressing themselves and a way of getting the necessary information that they needed. And their resistance, while they had initial resistance to becoming a part of the meeting, it eroded as they got older. And by the point that they were a teenager, they had gotten used to it and they had actually kind of grown to like it even. And what was happening with the 14-year-olds was that because they were being brought in at such an early age, at such a later age, they were having a bit more natural resistance because, they're teenagers and they're basically being told you have to come to this meeting that is, being held for like an hour at night or what have you. And they just didn't like being a part of it. And when they would go to the meetings, they wouldn't be as involved. They'd be very passive and they would kind of just hope the meeting would end as soon as possible. So that's just my real world take on it, and that I've actually seen and talked to youth that have experienced IEPs at different ages. I don't want to make this all about IEPs, but
Yeah.
that all of it ties back into advocacy because the 10-year-olds were able to develop the necessary parts of self-advocacy, which were communication and assertiveness, whereas the 14-year-olds, they wouldn't develop that, at least not as quickly. So let's move on to the next slide. We could talk about this for an
Yes.
hour, but we don't have that.
Communication is huge too, so that's a big thing too. Communication is really
Absolutely.
big.
So, oh, sorry. Sorry, there we go, that one. Okay, so let's move on to supported decision making. And we're going to be talking briefly about how supported decision making can be used in everyday life and how it is an alternative to guardianship. So Rachel, do you want to take over this slide or do you want me to do it? It's up to you.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right.
Okay, go ahead.
I think I'll take.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so supported decision making, which is commonly shortened to SDM, is an alternative to guardianship, and it basically allows individuals with disabilities to make their own decisions while receiving guidance from a support network of their choosing. And it's important to mention that even though support network is kind of oftentimes tied to large organizations like SPAN or CPAC or other parent centers across New Jersey, that's not really, you can have a support group that is comprised of just your family, of friends, and of trusted individuals within your own life. And we're going to go into a bit more detail on that. But something that is also important to keep in mind is that many of us already use supported decision making, and we might not even be aware of it. So supported decision making in its most basic form is just asking others for advice, for assistance, on decisions that are both big and small. Small being like, oh, should I order this at dinner? Or it can be something as big as what college should I go to? And that's something that we really try to prioritize among youth with disabilities because a lot of times they naturally feel that they're made to not have a voice, or at least that their voice does not matter as much as their non-disabled peers. And supported decision making is a great way of getting past that and making youth understand that they have an opinion and that they have every right to voice it. And we use supported decision making again, literally every day. All of us probably already use it
Everyone
when you talk
uses
to somebody.
it, even if you don't
Yeah.
think you're using it.
Mhm.
Yeah, you've used it, so it
Yeah,
doesn't matter if you have a disability or not.
It sounds a lot. It sounds like a very like heavy term, like, oh, like support decision making, but the reality is that it's a normal thing, and we're going to go into a bit more detail on its comparative to guardianship, but we just really want to make it clear that support decision making is very important, and it's also tied to advocacy because if you don't have the confidence to ask others for help with making your own decisions, then you're never going to gain the confidence to ask others for, help or for assistance, accommodations in school, things like that. It all kind of ties together.
Yeah, a lot of what we're going to say today, even now, supported decision, it goes back to that one recommended advocacy bullet point where we talk about asking for what you need. Well, when you're trying to figure out who your supporters are, you're gonna have to ask for what you need and ask for help. And I'm not sure if Jeremy pointed this out or not, but supported decision making is an alternative to guardianship. We're not here to tell you which one to choose. That is totally up to the youth and their family. It's a very personal decision. And again, it's an alternative to guardianship. So it's another option, to choose.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So let's go on to the next slide where we're going to go into a bit more detail. and we're going to talk about supported decision making in practice. Now, Rachel, I believe you had a personal anecdote you wanted to add to this, so I'll pass it off to you.
So I'm going to give an example of how I use supported decision making when I went to buy a car. And it was my first time kind of buying a car sort of on my own. My parents kind of helped, we've bought other cars, but this was the first time that I had a hand in the whole entire process. And as you can see, we have a model here. So I'm going to kind of walk through parts of the model to explain the process of how I use supported decision making to purchase my car. So the first thing where it says in the model, it says identify your goal. My goal was that I wanted to buy a car. I kind of needed it too, because the car my family and I were using, I don't drive, so the car my family and I were using was kind of like on its last leg. It was dying. So I needed to get a car. So when I talked to my family about getting a car, the second step is weighing our options. And the third step is looking at the consequences. When we weighed our options and looked at the consequences, some of the options and things we had to look at were, what kind of car did I want? Did I want a car with electric or manual? Did I want I use a wheelchair, so I need a car that has a ramp. Do I want the ramp to be a rear, like a ramp in the back or in the side? And another thing we had to weigh and look at the consequences of is, how was I gonna pay for the car? Was my parents gonna help me pay for the car? Was I gonna pay for it on my own? Am I gonna ask an organization to help me? Well, we decided when talking about the consequences and weighing our options that I was gonna get a lift in the car that was rear wheel, that was a rear loading ramp, so that I could get in any parking spot. So that was a decision that we made together. Another decision that we made when we were looking at the consequences and weighing the options was that we were going to use OVR to help us pay for the car, get the ramp and the accessibility features that I needed. As far as was it going to be manual or electric, we decided that it was going to be all manual, because the car, previous cars that I had, when we used electric, we realized that it broke a lot. So we decided to go that route. So as far as weighing my options and looking at things that way, I would talk with my family and have discussions. And my dad went with me to talk to the car people, and they knew that I was using OVR to help with the process, and he went with me to pick out the car and talk to them. And I used my OVR counselor to make sure I was doing the process in the right way. And other supports that I had in the process, where I talked to my friends that had gone through the same process. I talked to them about, did this happen to you when you got to this point of buying the car? Because several of them used OVR to purchase their car and support them. So I asked them their opinion. So that's kind of how I went through the process. And basically, I needed to use all those supports because it would have been more difficult for me to purchase the car, and harder if I didn't use supported decision making and the support of my family, the support of OVR to help me make all those decisions. So that's kind of how I went through the process of purchasing my car, and I've had it for a while now, and I went through all the steps. I paid for part of the car on my own, so it was kind of a big step for me. So that's the process, I guess. I know there's a couple of resources I wanted to talk about, but Jeremy, should I talk about them now, or because I know we have a couple of other slides about supported decision making?
We can probably talk about it later on once we get more towards like the end, the resource slides and all that.
Perfect.
But of course, thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to go into I keep trying to go to the next slide and keeps giving me trouble.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So just like Rachel, I also have a personal story when it comes to support decision making. My story is more to do with money and smart saving and budgeting. And budgeting is a skill, and I was not aware of that when I was younger. I really did not understand the value of a dollar. I kind of just assumed that um, money came from just nowhere. And for me, I had not set any kind of financial goals for myself. I didn't have any kind of a budgeting plan. I truly did not understand how to like effectively save money. So whenever I wanted something that was important for school, like a textbook or a new backpack or something like that, I would find that I wouldn't have the funds for it because I had been spending it on junk food, video games, comic books, things of that nature. And I realized I needed help. So I talked to my mother and I said, Mom, I need money. I think that's like literally the first thing I said. And she kind of like laughed and said, Well, you already have an allowance. What do you mean? I said, No, I need to like learn how to save money. I need these books for school. I also needed money for a field trip, but I need to know how to save money. So she sat down with me, and for the better part of a week, every night, we basically worked out a budgeting plan. Basically, this is like your threshold. You can only spend you can only spend maybe $100 a week, and every time you get a paycheck or part of your allowance or anything else like that, you need to separate part of it and put it into a savings account. That way, when the time comes for you to get these important materials, you have the money for it instead of just hoping that you have it. And this was very new to me as a teenager because I really hadn't thought about it at that point. And I honestly felt embarrassed initially asking her for help on it because I thought like, okay, I should know this. Like, I'm 16 years old. I should know better and all this. But I'm very grateful that I asked my mother for support because otherwise I probably wouldn't have been able to afford anything I needed for school, which would have very heavily impacted me on my academics. And that's something that is really incredible about support decision making is that initially you might seem hesitant to ask for help. I think just about everybody is initially hesitant, but once you get past that hurdle and you realize that the person you're talking to has advice and that you value what they say and that you trust what they say, most importantly, you'll find that they're going to introduce opportunities to you. They're going to explain things to you that you had never heard of before. And that is very important for youth, but it's also important for anyone of any age. There's never a time where you're too old to ask for assistance on anything.
No.
And that's something that I learned about. And by the way, that budgeting plan, I had a copy of it. I kind of forgot about it before bringing it in, but I still use that budgeting plan. It's been slightly edited. I still use it to this day, well over 10 years later. So that to me is tangible proof that if you start using SDM at a younger age, it will have lifelong benefits. So,
I love that. It's
mm-hmm.
so true.
On to the next one. Okay, so we're also going to talk about another important part of support decision making, and that is through goal setting. And we talked initially at the start about how you can use support decision making for both big and small decisions. Well, what does that mean? So a very clear example of this, going back again to school and with like youth and young adults, is a lot of times when you're in like the 9th grade or 10th grade, you don't know what you want to do once you get outside of high school. You
That's
don't
a
really
good point.
have a future plan. Like when we've all heard the classic question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And a lot of young people, they don't have any kind of answer to that, or if they have an answer, it's more often than not what they think you want to hear when you ask
Yeah.
that question. It's not anything of their own. And so what's really a resource that isn't really being talked about enough is guidance counselors. In school, we all have access to guidance counselors that their entire job is to sit down with us and to make sure we're on the straight and narrow, but also to make sure that we have tangible goals and ideas that we want to realize either while we're in school or once we transition over into uh, college or into a trade or just into adult life in general. And those guidance counselors who are oftentimes they have a background in teaching and they also sometimes can be psychologists. They are probably one of the best underrated tools when it comes to SDM because they want to make sure that your goals and your decisions and your choices are all yours, not someone else's, not what you think it should be, but it's 100% yours. And that is so critical for youth because as a former young person myself, I can say that when we feel that we have agency, when we feel that we have the ability to influence our own outcome, we are so much more motivated. We are so much more focused and dedicated to seeing those goals.
Can everybody hear me? One is, oh, sorry. Oh, one is called the Integrated Support Star, and that is from UMKC. And we thought that it would be helpful because what the Integrated Support Star does is it's a tool that a youth and a family can use, and they can put all of the supports that they have when they're making a decision like buying a car or wanting to buy something and making a budget. They can put all those supports down and it shows you supports like, or on this sheet it'll have supports like, what are your technology supports, what are your community supports, and you write those supports down, and then you can look at them with your support, your support team, and together you'll have all the supports on the one page so that you can make that decision together so that everyone will be on the same page. So that's a helpful tool to use. And again, that's from UMKC. Another tool that I wanted to bring up is called the Life Course Trajectory. And all of these tools, can we get Jeremy? Is Jeremy here?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I
Jeremy's
think the
back.
headset I was using, I guess it wasn't charging overnight, so I apologize for that.
Okay, we'll let
So
Jeremy finish and then I'll go.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
so where did I leave off actually? Because I saw someone was talking about guidance counselors in
You were talking about how important guidance counselors are to the school, and that's an underrated support, or it's an underrated tool and source support that people don't always have, and it's important for youth and that kind of thing. So that's where you were.
Okay. All right, thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, of course.
So okay, apologies for that. That was a bit of a technical mishap there. But yeah, basically what I was elaborating more on was that a lot of guidance counselors, they have a lot of professional backgrounds in teaching as well as psychology. So they're not just random people that the school picks up from the street to talk to students. These are people that they have accreditations and they have the background and education necessary to really understand what a student or young adult is feeling and how they can best first realize what their goals are, like what they want to do in 5 years, and also the best ways of achieving that. So that was like more or less like what I was kind of elaborating on. Rachel explained it really well, actually. And we do have resources and tools that are focused on this portion of support decision making. And we're going to get into them a bit more, like, again, once we hit the last couple of slides where we have the resources listed out for you.
Yeah, I guess I can either mention them now because
Sure.
the two, I'll just mention the other one briefly. I know I mentioned the Integrated Support Star. and the other one, which is from the MKC, and you can find it in our resource folder on this PowerPoint. And the other one is called a life trajectory tool, and I can go into more detail about it at the end when we talk about the resource, but it's basically a life planning tool when you have, when you're making a decision like this one, like Jeremy was talking about, or like I was talking about, and you can map out that goal. You can put one goal down, you can put as many goals as you want, and you can map that goal out, and it asks specific questions like, what are your obstacles to this goal? What's going, what's preventing you from reaching this goal, and how are you going to conquer that? And so that's a really good tool to use if you're trying to figure out how to make that decision, because those prompts will have you critically think, but you can also use the tool in other situations like the IEP meeting. You can use it kind of for any situation, and both the integrated supports and the life trajectory tool are from UMKC. And the other thing I wanted to mention really quick is that we work with an organization called Youth Voice, Youth Choice, and their website has a lot of resources for supported decision making. I actually was just recently on it not too long ago, and they have youth ambassadors. They have a comic strip that one of the youth ambassadors, Giancarlo, made that we have at the end of our PowerPoint. So we encourage you to check that out, because it has a lot of good resources about supported decision making, and they do a lot of cool stuff with youth, and SPAN works with them as well. So please feel free to check that website out as well.
Yes, absolutely. We are going to go into a lot more detail about Giancarlo's story near the very end, when we're going to be talking about youth programs. Thank you for mentioning that, Rachel.
Of course.
So let's go on to, okay, there. Okay, so this is talking more about transition. Sorry, we're actually now going to be transitioning from talking about support decision making into talking about transition planning and preparing for adult life. So Rachel, I'm going to have you kick this part off.
So transition planning is a part of the education process to help students with disabilities in high school get ready for life after school. All students require support transitioning from high school to the next stage of their life. Still, those with disabilities need extra assistance due to more significant challenges they face when becoming independent adults and pursuing further education. And I know we keep sounding like broken records a little bit, but this is another point of where those advocacy skills come in, because as you're transitioning to adulthood, different things are going to happen to you where you're going to have to use, you're going to want to use those advocacy skills and keep building on them. But I had a few resources that I wanted to share on some things, but Jeremy, is there anything else that you wanted to add before I add that part?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so SPAN, as you know, SPAN does a lot. So a few things that I wanted to mention SPAN does a lot with youth, and a few things I wanted to mention. Another resource that's in our resource folder is the SPAN Family Transition Guide, and it's in our resource folder. It has a whole plethora of different resources for youth and families that are transitioning to adulthood. So we encourage you to check that out. That's again in our resource folder. It takes you through kind of every step that your youth may be dealing with to transition to adulthood. We also encourage you to go to the parent center that's closest to you, because they have support. Accessing your parent center is also helpful. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And I think that was it for this one.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah, of course.
You explained it better than I could.
Yeah, of course.
So let's move on to the next slide, which is continuing to talk about transition planning. This slide's going to be taking more of a focus on healthcare. And Rachel, I think I can read this one off.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's okay. So a big part of transition planning is from healthcare, and specifically that's coming from the fact that a lot of time, oh, okay, sorry, just telling me that my audio is giving more issues again.
I can
Failed
still
to
hear
sync
you.
this.
And now I think you're muted, Jeremy.
Sorry, can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
It's giving me more issues.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Amy, can you hear Jeremy?
Yes.
Okay.
You're okay, Jeremy. Keep going.
Yes, okay, sorry about that. So where was I? Anyway, a big part of healthcare when relating to transition planning is that a lot of times youth that are transitioning out of high school and into college, that's also around the time that they're beginning to transition from a pediatrician into a standard doctor. And there can be a lot of difficulties with that because there is, well, first there's a kind of unfamiliar angle of it. You know, you've been going to this pediatrician since you were a kid. You've developed a connection with them. You can feel confident with talking with them, and now suddenly you have to, you're professional, but still stranger, and that can be very. Okay, looks my audio's okay again.
Yeah,
And
you're
so
good.
basically, a big part of transition plan is understanding that when you reach that age, it's about that time that you start being able to confidently talk with your doctor about various health needs or concerns that you have. And being aware of those is very important because if you just don't care about it, then I don't think I need to explain what happens when you just stop caring about your health. There's a whole cavalcade of issues that can arise from that. And when you have the understanding that you need to be open and communicative with medical professionals about yourself, you'll find that you avoid a lot of issues. But all of that is coming from comfortability, which again ties back into advocacy at the very start. If you are a self-advocate, you will develop the skills needed to talk to these people about what you need, even if it's a bit uncomfortable. I know it was certainly uncomfortable for me when I got a new doctor because, I'm very much an introvert. So getting to speak with someone brand new is always a bit of a challenge for me, especially when it's about anything that's personal. And there's nothing more personal than, your health. But eventually, I was able to become comfortable enough to talk with my doctor about the things I needed. So I know that if I can do it, anyone can do it. Rachel, did you have anything you want to share on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say also, like, a lot of times with health, healthcare is part of transitioning to adulthood. And with healthcare, if you're not taking care of your health or your health is struggling, it's really hard to do some of, those advocacy skills or, make a transition plan or start using some of the tools that we've talked about. It's really hard, because health comes first. And like Jeremy said, it goes back to using some of those, being able to use some of those advocacy skills to talk to your doctor and ask him for what you tell him the problem and ask him for what you need. But one of the major things I wanted to point out here is that SPAN is working on a project actually that I'm a part of, working with youth and healthcare transition. So we work with youth to create, and they help us create tools and different things to help families and give them support when they're transitioning to adult healthcare from pediatric care, because that's a big thing as well, transitioning from from pediatric care to adult care. So we work with youth who help us create tools to make it easier for families and youth to be able to do that. And I'm specifically on that project with SPAN, and it's really great. And also, the website is on our PowerPoint. So check out that website because the youth helped create that website. It's a center for transition to adult healthcare where you can find resources and things. So, and the youth were a big part of creating that. So be sure to check that out as well.
Of course, yes, and
Yep.
I agree with her. Absolutely, if you have the time, please check it out. It's very well made, and I personally liked it.
Yeah.
So let's go on to, there we go, to independent living. And I'll start this off and kick it back to Rachel. So the next portion is talking about independent living. So living independently requires a variety of skills, even if you have support available. And it's good to know the essential daily skills and abilities that you would need to live on your own. And that is, we have obvious things such as personal grooming and hygiene, maintaining personal safety. And, what we kind of mean by that is more, knowing how to keep yourself protected, locking your door at night, making sure that, you're not leaving valuables out on like the porch or things like that. And then also, probably most important is understanding how to care for yourself. And that can kind of come into a variety of different topics, such as learning how to get yourself to different areas of transportation, like buses, taxis, ride services such as Uber and Lyft. And there's also other examples, including, going to the grocery store, preparing food. If going to the grocery store is not an option, understanding the alternatives to that, like getting, your groceries delivered to you, which is a service that's becoming a lot more available all over New Jersey and especially all over the rest of the United States. So living independently, I should also make this clear before moving on, it means something different for everyone. So independent living to you might just mean, moving out of your parents' house and having a place of your own, and that's it. But living independently for someone else might mean that you do move out, but let's say you move to a house in the same neighborhood as your parents, so they're always close by. And it can also mean that you, instead of living on your own, you have roommates that can support you, and that can help with your accommodations. And there's literally thousands and thousands of examples of people having varying ideas of what living independently means. It's not all one definition. And that's probably the most important part to think about this, because you might ask someone, okay, I want to, move out on my own. I want to be living independently. What does that mean? And if they might tell you a really good version of what independent living means, but that might just not gel with you. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that different people have different ideas of what it means.
I don't mean
And
to interrupt you. I was just asked to provide you a 5-minute warning for your time
Okay. we can-
constraint.
okay,
Thank you.
all
guys.
right. So
I think we can
Thank
skip
you.
to the next one. The only thing I was gonna add to, well, yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
I was just gonna add that we have a resource in our resource folder that kind of breaks down that, independent living skills can look different for everyone, and that that tool, and that breaks down all the, those different skills and makes it easier if a youth is just learning all those skills and looks at it in different areas, and it's has a bunch of activities, and I guess you'll see it at the end.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah,
And,
of course.
Let's quickly move on to our engagement programs. So before we mentioned Youth Choice, Youth Voice, and we're actually featuring. We talked briefly about a young boy that was that had an article featured on their website, and that article and his story, a Giancarlo story, that's going to be featured on the Youth Hub, which is our weekly blog. That blog comes out every Friday at 4 p.m. And while this week we're going to be talking about youth leadership, as well as Giancarlo's story, the blog topic and its subsequent featured article, they change every week. And a great part of being a writer on that blog is that a lot of times the material that I'm writing about is provided to me by youth within our community. And we get a lot of requests. Sometimes people are a lot more passionate about the things they want us to write about than others. But it's just overall, it's great to see that people of all ages really they are passionate about topic, and they really trust us to write an accurate piece about it. The blog is only about a 5-minute read. It's we try to make it very accessible, very light, but also very informative. And to go on to our youth chat, I'm sorry, I'm kind of doing these a little bit out of order, but to talk about our youth chat, that is a presentation that we hold normally at the end of every month. And that goes on from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And that is headed up by a presenter that's usually covering a topic of their choosing. Our next chat is actually going to be held on October 9th, a little bit earlier than usual. But that is because the topic at hand is about voting and about how to register to vote and about how to stay educated about the candidate and about how to basically figure out what you are looking for when you're voting. And the reason we're having that a little bit earlier is because the last day to register to vote is October 15th. So we want to get ahead of that date. And so we're going to be having that on October 9th, like I said, at 4 p.m. And we also have SPAN's youth advisors. They also have different training programs, and we also participate in regional meetings, teleconferences, webinars. We do a lot, and we try to connect with as many other centers as possible, especially when they're doing work that relates to youth and young adults. And I'm just going to go on to the resource slide here. So we briefly talked about a bunch of resources previously, like UMKC. We also talked about the Family Guide to Transition, which is just an overview of transition resources. And all of these are going to be included in the presentation, which should be available in the chat. If it isn't, I'll just repost it. But each of these resources we picked out ourselves because we found that they would be the most advantageous to helping out youth and young adults who have a need for resources like this. This other one is just,
and many of them I've used with youth too. So yeah, so a lot of them are pretty helpful. So be sure to check them out.
Yeah, so we I wish we had more time to go into it, but just trust us. I can personally attest that each of these resources, you'll find something here that you like or something here that is of need to you and or your organization. So let's go on for resources. And then we also have, last up, we have some helpful websites or websites of interest. This is the Parent Center Hub, Life Course Tools. We also have I'm Determined, which is a resource that I use on the blog all the time to the point where they probably know me by name. And all these resources they have been recommended to us either by others in our region, or we have found them on our own accord. And each of these websites, just like the tools, they all hit a specific niche or a specific resource. So there's something here for everybody.
And all the tools that are on here are tools that we talked about within the presentation. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, and I think that is, oh, I'm sorry, there's just a couple more resources here. And then I'm going to end this off with a quote provided to us by Rachel, a quote that I freaking love. And it is, a hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. That is from the actor Christopher Reeves. And I don't think there's a quote on this planet that relates more to self-advocacy and perseverance than that.
Well, since we were talking about heroes, and I thought it was fitting. So that's why I put it in there. So hope everyone enjoyed our presentation. And if you have any questions or you need anything, feel free to contact us. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. All our contact information is provided here, including the number to our warm line, which we mentioned at the very start. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy and Rachel. We truly appreciate your time and expertise and sharing of all of your knowledge and resources on empowering youth with advocacy and inclusion strategies. Also, thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us and being a part of this session. We hope you learned something valuable and feel inspired to utilize these tools and resources on your own hero's journey.